What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Today, I am joined today by Enrique, who topped at BSF White Plains with Stormhaven. Enrique, are you here?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here, and so I'm glad to have you here. So I want to know, why in the world did you choose this deck out of all the decks you could play?
Why I chose to do Stormhaven actually starts from when I began Shadowverse, since when Set 1 released. I've always, when I started the Shadowverse, the main craft I wanted to start with was Haven craft. I felt a lot of fun playing Haven craft. Even during Set 1 when everyone was doing Holy Sentinel, I was already cooking with other deck builds. Such as I mainly played around using Archpriestess Lelia with Moon Amaraj
Okay.
as my main deck, rather than just the Set 1 meta, which is Holy Sentinel. I just didn't find the gameplay as to my preference, and so I was already trying to figure out ways of other play styles I could play the deck, rather than just focus solely on what the meta was already there. And I've personally was never been a meta person as well, so I always try to think of different decks from the mainstream.
Okay. All right. So when you were building this deck, so how did you come about building this version of Stormhaven?
So how it started was when Set 3 dropped, I already knew I was going to be playing the deck, but because of what is already there, I was pretty much still play testing of like what was the end goal. Normally you would think it was try to use Diamond Master, but the actual like key card of the deck for Set 3 was playing around with the Ruby Falcon, because Ruby Falcon dealt a lot of the burn for the deck. You didn't, and as I kept playing it, I realized you didn't want to have too many wards in your deck, and wanted to really capitalize on the effects of Amnesty Lion and Diamond Master getting Storm. Those two are your biggest, one of your two biggest key cards, together with the Pinion Prayer or Beast Call Aria. Basically, majority of the cards that give you that Storm benefit early game. And so as the BSF was getting closer and closer, I was playing testing with a bunch of my teammates, who were one was using Abyss and another was using Forest. I would say that playing against those two decks gave me a lot of insight of how I personally should have been, how I should be playing the deck, because this deck revision wasn't as it was as it is now. Like before, this deck didn't even have the Goblin engine, the Goblin Princess, Goblin. It didn't have any of those cards. And pretty much as time went on, it just went up to this.
Okay. So now explain to me what your thought process is when you're playing against your like optimal matchup. So what would be like a perfect hand, or what would be your play lines going through turns 1 through 4?
Um, I would say a preferable hand would either be at least having a Bellringer. Would be your most important turn 1 card. Wingy, Pinion Prayer, Will to Overtake, or Bellringer. One of those two at least has to be in your hand. Maybe having 2 Amnesty Lions as well, just to have that early aggression. Because that's, let's say if you have Bellringer in hand and you have Amnesty Lion, turn 1 you'd have Bellringer down. If Bellringer still lives, turn 2 you'd have Amnesty Lion go down. Gives Bellringer +1 attack, and nobody expects a Bellringer to hit you for 1 damage. And so you'd be taking a total of 3 damage straight to face on turn 2. If they didn't have any wards or such.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I was starting with a Wingy, I would go for turn 1 Wingy put down, and then on the second turn I'd either search, depending on the matchup of who I'm playing, let's say I'm against the deck that I believe is more of a control deck. I would try to search for Wingy's targets on Evo are so far just gonna be Bellringer, MST Lion. Wingy can also search for Goblin Princess if you want to go for the Goblin turn, just to get that Goblin King out on turn 4. And then if it and as I was saying, going to the control player, I'd want to have that Diamond Master on my hand at least by turn 4, even though I don't have the points for Evo yet. Just so if I ever have a field put down already, they'd still have to target Diamond Master to even target my my field.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and then so ideally I'd want one Bellringer, one Amnesty Lion. Pinion Prayer is also a good card to have, and generally like a Will to Overtake, just to look at the top cards of my deck and trying to at least fix it. So like you don't want to see your big bodies in your hand too early. And generally this deck does have some search mechanics already, so it shuffles back any cards that were put to the bottom, like putting down Goblin Princess shuffles your deck. So any cards you put to the bottom will get moved around anyway. But yeah, I think that's about it for my starting hand. Generally just low cost body cards, just for the early game to have that aggression. And then you can search your big bodies much later into the game as the game progresses.
Okay, yeah, like it's pretty interesting that you have both early game elements and like late game elements. That's what I said in the video yesterday, if anyone peeped. And I'm very excited to talk about this deck. So let us go over card for card, or however you want to go through the deck. Just explain this deck to me in total.
Alright, so as you see, that Stormhaven, also known to others as like Gemstone Haven. The main focus of the deck revolves around Wingy, Amnesty Lion, Diamond Master, Ruby Falcon. Generally, those 4 cards already are like the heart cards for the deck. Without them, you can't really have the Gemstone Stormhaven deck in general. So putting those cards there together with not forgetting Bejeweled Shrine, also a key card for the deck. I only run this as a one-off because you don't want it lingering in your hand for too long, and it's not all the time that you get to use it, because you place it down as an amulet and it takes up space, and it's not always your. It helps a lot when trying to give that extra buff. It's just a 1/1 buff, but like if you leave a unit there for too long and you keep buffing it with Bejeweled Shrine, it will lead to a very big body. Especially like for example, Moona Mirage. If you have Moona Mirage already on field, and you had if you had placed Moona Mirage on the turn and you already have Bejeweled Shrine up from a previous turn, Moona Mirage would then attack for 5, will hit for 5, and then by the end turn it will be like 8 health.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the just like late game killers. And for one of the key cards too is having the Diamond Master. Diamond Master Evolve is also really essential for the deck. Ideally, when you play Diamond Master, let's say turn 7. Normally, right now, whenever I play Diamond Master, I always give it Storm. It's very rare that I would ever think of giving it Ward, because I want to keep up the tempo and aggression as much as possible. And just being able to give that Storm just helps a lot, because I've learned when playing against my teammates is that the moment I choose to keep placing down wards, my tempo and aggression just backfires on me. So the deck suddenly just starts slowing down, and I can't put as much gas into my gameplay as much as I want to. So once it starts, it has to start rolling down till your opponent is dead, pretty much.
Yeah.
Can you? And then there's the evolved form of Dian Master.
Okay.
Yeah, so the evolved form of Dian Master, it's, as it says, it selects a follower with Storm or Ward that costs 3 play points or less into your cemetery and put them into your field. So the combo for this would actually, when evolving Dian Master, is that you should already have either Ruby Falcon in your cemetery. You should have Ruby Falcon, Amnesty Lion, or if you want, maybe a Bellringer, if you're desperate for that one extra draw. Those are your like, so in this current deck profile, those are your only targets. You could probably go for Wingy, just for like one extra ward, but Bellringer is a much better option in that case because of the extra draw that it provides. So when on the combo, if you want to keep up aggression, I would say to choose Amnesty Lion, because that gives your opponent straight 7 damage straight to the face on that turn. And if you already have Dian Master and Dian Master's still alive, then you evo. I'd say maybe Ruby Falcon would be a good choice too if you want to give that just like that burn damage, just because they have a ward. Because that's still that Ruby Falcon's effect still procs because the Dian Master attacking that turn. So if it tries to hit like their ward, let's say, and Dian Master dies, you still deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. And I also checked this with the judge during the event, just to clarify. So even if, let's say, you have Bellringer on field and you have a Ruby Falcon, even if you use Bellringer to attack for 0, it's still considered an attack. So Ruby Falcon effect still procs and deals damage to your enemy leader. So Bellringer technically will hit you for 1, even if it dies. So I also get 1.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Bellringer just becomes an attacker, which is great, especially like regardless of how much damage you give, you try to put out your opponent, every bit of damage counts. And can't forget having the Pinion Prayer and Beast Call Aria, just getting those Holy Falcons out helps the deck so much as well. Just getting those 2/2 attackers with Storm straight, and even if they die, like it doesn't hurt you as much because they're still tokens. It's okay if they die early on because they're not from your deck anyway. And then I'd say this one thing that this deck does have problems with, I would say, is just some decks that do have control functions, like Forest, like for example Elfchild May. If they played Elfchild May and they're able to start bouncing their cards with like Nature's Guidance, your Bellringer would die, and sure, you get an extra draw, but then you'd have no field. And if you try to place Amnesty Lion on that turn, Amnesty Lion has no targets. So it's kind of like an kind of feel bad, but you still get to put up 2 damage if they have no ward. And then against, I'd say that this deck actually does do pretty well against Sword. as long as you get your pieces right.
Mhm.
Because this deck does deal with field, specifically for with using John, for example. John wipes out your entire enemy field. I opt to use regular John instead of Dark John, because regular John, essentially, even with Evo at 6, deals 4 damage to your enemy field, rather than Dark John, which only deals 2 damage on base, and then on Evo, you still take damage.
Mhm.
You yourself also take 4 damage, which is kind of annoying to play for this deck, because there's no heal mechanic in this deck in general. The only card that heals you is just Acolyte's Light and Glow to the Stairway. But even so, that's still not enough heal to counter against most decks, like other decks which can heal far more than you. I think that's why I also had trouble against my teammates, because they pretty much played decks which I had, which were hard counters to my deck. They just had the better field advantage and control.
Yeah, that's how it is sometimes. You know, playtesting with your teammates, and then they're playing the absolute worst matchup for your deck, and you're like, all right, I'm going to this tournament and I'm gonna get washed. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Thankfully, like, I only fought against a Forest player once throughout the tournament. I don't know. I fought against a Forest, I believe, twice. Wait, I mean, yes, I fought him. I fought a Forest player twice throughout the tournament. One was on round 3, which I lost, and then the second time was on top 4 cut against both were Elephant Forest decks.
Okay.
So one was a 1 win, 1 loss. I got my revenge.
Well, yeah, as long as you get your lick back. Well, now that we're on the topic of decks, let us talk about, like, you were talking about Forest having, like, maybe like a so-so matchup, and then Swordcraft, you have a pretty good matchup. So what's the worst matchup for this deck?
I think so far, from when I've been playing the deck, I think it's been Abyss. A bit. I mean, Forest is still a tough matchup in regards, just because of the control they have early, and especially with the big wards. I'd say the toughest decks right now to fight against for this deck is I'd say Abysscraft, Necrocharge Ector, just getting that field, and especially with Demonium becoming like a 3/4 on Necrocharge 10. It's just really hard to fight against if I'm not able to pull out either John or my Team's Decree. Because even then, if I don't pull them out, I am most likely very screwed. just because of the field advantage and the damage they put out is just far more.
So,
as for, yeah, you were saying?
So your worst matchup would be Abyss Control. So now, what would be the optimal matchup for this deck?
Optimum matchup. Sometimes it can be hard to say, because this deck generally revolves around you trying to put out the aggro. I would say, from me personally, I would say this deck does fairly well against Sword.
Mm-hmm.
And all the decks I fought during the BSF were also Hero Sword decks. There's even one deck, I think it was round 2, I was playing against Hero Sword, and I was playing we were playing the game where we didn't even care if we had any wards on field. We just kept bashing each other straight at each other. So I think what happened during that turn was that I placed Holy Pinion Prayer first, and then I cracked it to summon Holy Falcon. Holy Falcon hit twice. That was like 4 health. 4 health that straight from there. and then he kept trying to deal with my field. And it got to a point in where I had 2 or 3 MST lions in hand, placed them all down, and I dealt around like 10 damage on one single turn. And after that, I placed Diamond Master and calling in another MST lion, just because one of the MST lion died as well. So that was like another 7.
So much aggression.
Yes. It's pretty much what you have to do with this deck. You have to be aggressive. But you just knowing what the right cards are for that aggression, I think is key. Kind of just like you have to mix and match with your opponent.
Yeah,
like
you gotta vibe check them.
Yeah, pretty much. Just gotta vibe check. Like there are times in which if I didn't have any lion on my hand, I would go for the Goblin Princess to then either put down a Goblin, or if I wanted that extra draw, I just put down a Bellringer. Then I just Evo just to have that Goblin King on my EX area. So if ever I needed the 6/6 ward for 4 cost, he's there.
He is beefy.
Yes, he is beefy. He is beefy for sure.
For sure, chunky boy.
Yeah, I think I only benefited from his fanfare effect about like 1 or twice throughout the tournament. And it wasn't that big either. Maybe it was just like 1 Goblin. Goblin Princess died the previous turn. Just because I needed the Evolved Follower Rush. But yeah, I think that I would for sure definitely say that Abysscraft would definitely be the toughest matchup to get. Second would be Forest. Then I think Dragon after. Then Haven, then Sword.
Okay.
I think that would be the lineup. Yeah, I think that would be the hierarchy of like difficulty to not as difficult.
Okay, so before we get into our closing thoughts and any changes, so what is your game plan against Egghaven? Are you too fast for Egghaven, or do they destroy your board?
Egghaven does destroy my board, but I actually fought the Karage, who was an Egghaven player who got the first place. The matchup was just bad because of the amount of control that they had. So because of with the explosion, my field just gets destroyed instantly, and so I have to try building up that entire board up. And most of my bodies are way below 5 health. So that matchup for sure would definitely be part of the tougher matchups. I think together around with the Forest, around that level. But if they're not able to get their pieces fast enough, and if the deck is able to if they don't bother not respect your board, you can definitely bring them down real fast. You can beat them down real fast. During that tournament, I brought the Karage, who's playing Egghaven, down to 10 health, and I was also at 10 health. If he didn't kill me, if he didn't deal all that 10 health in one turn, I would probably have put that back right at him, and hopefully with the draw of the cards, I won. I could have won.
But the heart of the cards, of course.
Yes, the heart of the cards is always key.
Okay, so outside of the matchups, you said Egghaven was, probably the worst matchup. So if you were to make any changes in the deck, what would you make?
I would definitely take out the Globe of the Stairway. There were times in which it came to my hand, and it was just because the effects in total is 2 put down, you get an amulet, but then it's another 2, so total, just to use the full effects of the card, you need a total of 4 play points. And I didn't have the leeway to use all 4 play points for my advantage. I still need to playtest it, but I've thought of trying to use a Grimnir in place of it,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's also an extra target for Diam Master. Because Grimnir is a 3 cost, 3/4, 3 attack, 4 health, and because it has ward and is a 3 cost less, it can be chosen as a target for Diam Master to evolve. So you're able to get that a 3/4 ward. It's beefier than Ruby Falcon,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say it lives to see the next turn. You can also evolve it, deals 4 damage to your. You have to still pay 6, but you deal 4 damage to your enemy field and to them themselves. So it also hits for face. There's just more benefits to using it in this deck than I initially thought. I didn't think of it before BSF, but I saw one video talk about the uses of Grimnir, and I was like, oh, I should try testing it in the deck. And so I still need to play test the card itself, but for sure, I think the only card that I would change is this Globe the Stairway. Everything else, I think it functions as it's supposed to.
Okay.
Or maybe just like add one extra Will to Overtake or Bejeweled Shrine, because this deck is a 41 card deck. You could probably just put like one extra if you want the extra Themis or extra spells. But besides that, everything's is as it is.
Okay, so all right, as we're closing off here, so if you were to talk to anyone that wants to get like new into Shadowverse and they want to build, you know, your Stormhaven deck or just Stormhaven in general, what is some advice and tips you would give them?
Advice and tips. I would say, if you're trying to get into Shadowverse, try to have fun with it. Maybe like you may see this deck and might have fun with it. But I would say try to explore, try to find different, try out the different decks. There's a plethora of different archetypes now in the game with the release of Set 4, and even more so with the release of Set 5 coming out next month. That kind of broadens your perspective of the different playstyles that each craft will have. I'd say experiment. Like for me, right now I'm also trying to experiment with the Gorgons on Abysscraft. Trying to play with the Gorgon sisters. Trying to play around with that. I just enjoyed the whole mechanic of using tokens with Bane just to mess with my opponent's field. And it's just a lot of fun. I'd say explore, test out decks, try out maybe some decks that your friends use.
Alright, so I don't know what happened to the video. I did some editing and it did not go well when I did it in editing. So a whole bunch of it was clipped out and had bad audio. So I apologize to everyone that was really interested into the video and the closing of it. Enrique was really pointing out that if you're new to Shadowverse, really enjoy the game and have some fun with it. I appreciate all of you for bearing with me in this little time of difficulty, but I appreciate all of you. Alright guys, make sure you're safe whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one, and sorry about the video. Bye.